Good evening, Reb Shlomo. What a pleasure to get back together after a long break. So maybe even, some people by the recording could be listening to this one after the other, and other people may have taken a break together with us. So if you can recap where we're holding, and then Hakdama, and to jump right into where we're up to.
Okay, so a quick recap is that we were learning the importance, we're middle of Perek Daled, and we're learning the importance of a very honest and thorough self-assessment, critical self-assessment. In Perek Gimel, we spoke about the danger of being blinded by Abbas Atzmai, and what that could do to us. And in Perek Daled, we started talking about, if we're going to quickly start again from the beginning, not the whole thing, but Perek Daled says at the Tanai Rishon, we need to get to know, have a good stock of what we're made of. So kol bnei adam bli havdil hayachas in the gezer prasim the gezer amaynim bali malav chesarn. No matter where we come from and who we are, we have our strengths and weaknesses. That's the way the Eibishter made us. He gave us our milas, because that's what perfect humanity, which means that's our gift to the world. And our gift to ourselves is our chesonis. It's a chesonis b'shvil ha'avoda. And we went into that, how really our chesonis are our greatest opportunity, and our students' chesonis are the greatest opportunity for them and for ourselves, because the ultimate hatzlacha is not to just rally on our successes, rather to turn our failures into a success. And that's where we left off. We left off that understanding the opportunities in our weaknesses is what makes us open, allows us to notice our weaknesses. Because as long as we think that our weaknesses are a death sentence, and this is what's going to ruin our life, then it's natural for us to be in denial that they exist. And when we see the opportunity in them, we're open to seeing them and looking forward to changing them. So let's continue from where we left off. Strengths and weaknesses are in two groups. Tivim toldusim, and there's tivim regilusim. Nature and nurture. Both are true. There are certain things we have from birth and certain things we have from our chinuch, from our habits, from what we got used to, what we're accustomed to. Ushneim, both nature and nurture, mishtarshim ba'adam, mizman lizman, ba'oimik yosef. They're rooted into us deeper and deeper and become more nisached with us with time. Ad katoldusi nasik moi atzmi, shaboifen achra I efsher, arigilusi nasik moi atoldusi, or kamai mehergal nasik heaven. They both get an upgrade. Nature, there's something more powerful than nature. And that is, this is who I am. It's not just my nature. It's not something that I'm easily triggered to do something. This is just what I am. It's like the fact that I take up space is not a nature. It's the law of physics. And for some people, it's almost the law of physics that they're quiet, that they're loud, that they're angry, that they're explosive, or that they're extremely pleasing, right? Things that could be a teva. Teva means I have a likelihood of moving in one direction over the other. I'm quicker to get angry or slower to get angry. Atzmi means this just became who I am with time. That's stronger than teva. Yeah. Stronger than,
I think, just to use maybe language of terms, maybe the word would be in today's English, we refer to it as a predisposition. Predisposition means I am likely to go in that direction, but it's still not the same as the way it becomes cemented if I actually follow that pattern. So Todasi is the predisposition. The Kimoi Atzmi is once the predisposition actualizes, Regilusi is what we would call, environmental influences. I was in a class. My siblings. My sibling has a predisposition to do kach v'kach. Regilusi. I mimicked it. I copied it, and now
education, peer pressure, self-work, right? Anything could be something that I nurtured myself or people nurtured me in a certain direction, positive or negative. And that could become as powerful as nature.
Right. Not to get carried away too much by it, but like sometimes when they want to do like a study to understand the difference between nature and nurture, once in a while they'll take two identical twins, which from a genetic predisposition, they have, just about the same predispositions. But the environments, if these two twins were adopted and raised by two different parents, so we would be able to see, is this what turned out to actualize for them? Was it influenced by the environment, or was it the nature or the nurture?
Mm-hmm. What's very interesting from these words of the Frierdiker Rebbe, what's stronger, nature or education?
Well, the education, because education has the overruling factor that it can rewrite even what's nirgash k'mayatzmi.
Right. And toldusi has to be exercised, which means our chinuch has to allow us to act out on a negative nature in order for it to become atzmi or k'mayatzmi. And if we don't act out on it, like we're going to see soon, that could be weakened. In other words, our regilus could overtake nasa teva sheni, and then with time, that becomes more atzmi. So nature, yes, puts us in a certain starting point, but where we're going to move with it is really up to chinuch, which is a tremendous psura. I think for humanity.
But just to mention, in other words, not just that chinuch makes, in other words, even what was todosi and became k'may atzmi, there always is the idea that it can be rewritten. And the Frierdiker Rebbe uses this lashon in a different place about the charitzi hamoyach, right? And in today's language, I believe they refer to it as neuroplasticity, where the mind, in other words, even a predisposition that was actualized and became like you have neural pathways to think a certain way or to react a certain way, through education, through work, a person has the ability to rewrite.
So the Frierdiker Rebbe continues. Moving adavar sheshtei hamarachis. Aleph, Marechas Hamaylas, Beis, Marechas HaChesronos, both of these groups, strengths and weaknesses, Einon misgadlis, misrachvis, mishtarshis, mitzadatzmum, lishum shkidas aveda upoil. They don't grow, they don't become deeper and rooted in us without us acting on it and working on it. They don't develop on their own with time. Kizelu mazel selikim. Eberster made it fair and parallel the way strengths and weaknesses are going to work. Just like a person doesn't get smarter from sitting on his couch without exercising their brain, they don't become smarter. Without using them and being consistent with it, they don't grow. Which is interesting because weakness, if we don't do anything, weakness could become weaker. If it would just be a lack of, you could say if someone's lacking depth, so not working on it, he'll become even more and more shallow. If we're talking about something that's just header, and header perhaps can grow from doing nothing. But when we're talking about a positive force, a bad midah is an energy. It's a personality. And just like strengths won't grow without working on them, negative traits are not going to grow without working on them. So mitam zanurim and muchash litim krevis. See very often as you lodim in arim balik kisharim rav balamatias rois. Ne pisim nisharim alamadam and blis pateach. Balik kisharim bekishinisem ubalamatias rois kishinisem. We see people that were doing well in their strengths. You see this very often. You can see from one year to the other. I think this sticks out most when they move over from one. Like from elementary to Mesivta, or from Mesivta to Zal. You see this a lot because of different changes, because it's a new stage in learning. They're suddenly not developing in the next step. They were doing smart, they were doing very good, they were on top of the class, and suddenly they're not growing anymore. They stopped growing. They were growing in leaps and bounds, and something happened, they stopped growing. And this can happen, obviously, in the middle of elementary. It could be from one class to the other. And the reason is intellect doesn't grow from age. Someone once said that I once thought that maturity comes along with age, and then I learned that age many times comes alone. So age many times, we think that intellect comes with age. Sometimes age comes alone. Have a long white beard without developed skills and it has to be exercised. And as soon as people aren't challenged anymore, or they think they have it and they don't feel that drive to work as hard, you suddenly see them on a standstill in their development, even though it looked like it was coming with age, but it doesn't come with age. It only comes with work. And that's the same with negative traits. So the Sivas Adavar, he stopped in their diligence and their consistency of developing their keshenis. They were missing opportunities to express their negative traits. And I think this is a very powerful statement. I think the Friedrich Rebbe is giving us a certain message over here. I focused on this in the series of classes on personality. And what I understand the Friedrich Rebbe is saying over here is that this itself is a method in Chinuch. Just like we understand that a method in Chinuch is exercise your strengths, it's a method in Chinuch to not give a child opportunities to exercise their weaknesses. So even before changing someone's nature, if they're not mature enough to work on their nature, or you're not capable in helping them of changing their nature, just the fact that you're going to take away their opportunities to act out, you're going to take away their need to act out, is going to make a real change. It's going to weaken that negative trait that they have. So we spoke about if there's a Talmud that is power seeking, that is control seeking, that is attention seeking, looking to be appreciated and to be noticed, giving them what they need, talking to them in their language, giving them the type of motivation that they need, the cover that they need, the attention that they need, in a positive way, in an educational way, giving them power in an educational and positive way, will take away their need to act out in class. And you might think, well, but we're feeding into their weakness. They're hungry for power and we're giving them power. But yes, that's step two. We're going to get to that. Step two is to work on changing that, desire for power, that unhealthy desire for power. But number one, stop the negative behavior by taking away the opportunities, or better, taking away the need for them to act out. They got the attention that they needed. They don't need to disturb to get their attention. They got the control or the power or the respect that they needed, and they were looking for, perhaps because of their weakness. But that took away the need. So this itself It's like we know that iskafia itself changes a person. When a person doesn't give in to their nefesh habahamis, that itself stops the nefesh habahamis from being mispashit and controls it and weakens it from a lack of use. So that's step number one. That's like a level of iskafia.
I think just to add a little bit of language to it, in other words, a lot of the word that I think would define a lot of when we talk about netias or the netias today, we call behaviors. They're behaviors. Now, behaviors become reinforced for the good and for the worse. They're self-reinforcing. The more we repeat them, the stronger it becomes. That is the way I go. So good behaviors, the more you do them, they reinforce themselves. Bad behaviors, unfortunately, the more they do it also, the stronger of that becomes my go-to reaction. Now, a lot of times, just interesting to unpack this, even let's say to certain classroom scenarios. Say that, I'll use an example that recently came up in a conversation recently with mechanchim. A person, vatranos, compromise to be mevater for someone else is obviously a midah tova. The inability to be mevater for someone else, in other words, putting your own needs always first, is obviously, it's a netiyah, and there's other things involved in it. It could be the person doesn't understand that there's someone else's needs, or he doesn't understand, but he doesn't know how to compromise or negotiate or whatever it is. Now, a teacher, a good Rebbe, has one or two things. Sometimes he can work on the netiyah itself, right? In other words, try to give the child all the skills that he would need, perspective, for negotiation, compromise, try to teach him all of these concepts that he may be lacking on his own. That's one way. But the other way is, and this a lot of times teachers see success just in taking a more makiftic approach. And I'm not saying it's as panemiistic, but it also is it's a pathway. And that is, a lot of times teachers will say they'll create class systems, right? So let's say you find that two boys always fight about a certain game. Well, just by having a system, who gets what when, you know what, at least we're not teaching the person vitor, but we're at least also not reinforcing a bad behavior where he fights and he gets his way, and you say, you know what, let him just have it. So it's chaseres ha'izdamnos, by having good classroom systems. Many times you may not be working on the behavior, but you're taking away the opportunity for the bad behavior to repeat itself and thereby reinforce itself as becoming the person's, his reality, his way of doing business.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you see the language in Chassidus is skafia, amevili is habta. Achra meisim shochem alavodas.
Right.
There's real change that comes from a change of behavior. And this is just, looking at the muscles, looking at these as muscles. When you use them, you grow them. You don't use them, they stop growing and even shrink. And understanding that if we could buy time sometimes, we're not just buying time and pushing off the issue for the next Rebbe to deal with.
Right. We're allowing the child to become more of a person, his own maturity, for him to have that awareness and readiness to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And there's another point, maybe a little bit in Yana D'Yayma. It's hard to work on a peace treaty before there's a ceasefire. When there's still negative behavior, when people were just hurt, it's usually a two-way, battle. So if the student is still acting up, the teacher is still putting them down, which to the student is offensive many times. So there's still a battle. And there's no way that we can work on changing a person while there's still a war. Ceasefire, there's no negative behavior. We figured out a way, everyone found their space. We give people, their corner where they could express themselves and they feel satisfied, or it's the system. No one's bleeding. The teacher is not bleeding from being overwhelmed by the negative behavior. The student is not bleeding from being put into place constantly because they keep on acting out. Once things are peaceful, there's a ceasefire. that itself brings a person to be ready to listen, to be taught, to work on themselves, to change. So we spoke about, kemach in Torah. If you don't feed someone, you can't teach them. You don't make them feel good, you're not going to be the one to help them change and help them notice what needs to be changed. So that's step number one, for many reasons, for many angles. Step number one is we could get the behavior under control. Skafia. Step number two is going to be pneumistic change. Omna. This person is completely out of control. Things developed completely in a wilder way, in a wild way. A person can always change, like you pointed out before, not just if something is a regilus, even if something is a teva and it became a atzmi, a person can change. How? Bekoyach ha'elyon, with the higher power. There's a higher power that was given to every one of us. I can't refrain from putting this as a contrast to the concept of a higher power as mentioned in the 12-step program for addictions. And the contrast, when I say the contrast, is that the belief in, it's not even the world of psychology because it's not so much psychology, but belief in the 12 steps is that I am powerless. Because this became an atzmi, perhaps this concept of a teva becoming an atzmi is similar to the concept of an addiction. And we're saying, I'm powerless. I need a koyach elyon. I need a higher power to pull me out of this, to control it. As Yidden, the higher power is inside of us. Our nefesh bahamis might be powerless, but our nefesh elokis is powerful. So the higher power is implanted inside of us. A Yid can never truly say, can never truly be the reality that he's powerless. He has to know that, yes, he needs a higher power, but that higher power is inside of him. And that's his nefesh elokis. And the koiches that the nefesh
tapping
elokis
inwards into your personal higher power.
Yeah. What is the shvua mavora muzbar in shvua zu? Shvua soiva hanafshia shalafum gamlasich. We're all given the koiches according to the pekel, or the pekel was given according to the koiches, but definitely our koiches are a match for the challenges and for the weaknesses that we have. Shalachal echad leisin hakadosh baruch hu koiches yeruchnim lahafech hasheichel nahira. So this is a seva, this is a zetikite. We were empowered, we were filled up, we were fueled with everything that it takes for us to transform our weaknesses into strengths, which is very, very powerful words. And again, mainly the Frierdiker Rebbe here is talking about the Mechanech himself. All of this could be applied to how we're dealing with our Talmidim. But this is true with adults and with self-work. Number one, we could control behavior, and that itself brings us closer to a pneumistic change. And we could not only control our negativity, we could transform our negativity into a positive force. So if there's an extreme negativity in the area of we were talking Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Uffer, each of them could be a very positive force. Having a lot of Eish could be powerful and selfless leadership that's completely giving and completely good. So a person doesn't need to get rid of their personalities and their strengths. The strengths can be transformed into, we should say, their personality that's expressing itself in a negative way can be transformed into something positive. Kitzer b'nei adam him balamayla es a chesonis b'tolusam regilusam b'choilas ha'ovid lahapich as a cheson lamayla. The bottom line is, look out for your weaknesses. Those are your opportunities. Those are the ultimate gifts that you got from the Eibishter. Turn them into a Maila. That's what you were born for. That's where you're going to have the most time of the earning of real success is in transformation. And I think this is such a powerful message. And if we look at ourselves that way, we're going to look at our Talmidim that way. If we're proud of our victories in our own self-work, that our weaknesses, the ugliest parts of ourselves, are the Evan Masa Pina, that despicable part of myself turned into my greatest strength. When I see a Talmud, oh, he's so full, he's so this, he's so that. I'm like, wow, this is going to be the ultimate success. This is something really to look forward to. The goody-goodies, that's not what I respect. The goody-goody part of myself isn't my claim to fame. And what I'm excited to work on in my class are those that this is an opportunity for real atzlacha, for real chinuch. Anything, Rabbi Blau, anything you want to add before we jump into Perek Hey?
Yeah, I think in other words, the truth is I don't have much to add. I'll just say two quick points. One is something that you said, but it's not text-based. In other words, you mentioned it in passing that, and it's a very strong point. I just wanted to elaborate even a little bit more. You mentioned in passing that the time to teach a behavior, right, is not in the moment of the heat. Now, there's two ways of looking at that. There's one way is that, okay, if you're going to try to lecture a student while he's already fully aggravated, and you're going to try to teach him now all of the values of vatranos or whatever it is, he doesn't hear vatranos, he hears you don't care about what he's saying. That's like, so to speak, the psychological way to look at it. But it goes really even a little bit deeper, is that bechlal, when we're in that mode, in other words, once we're aggravated, or call it activated, when a person, or some people call it a red zone, when a person's in a zone where he's dysregulated, or he's in the flight and fight mode, it's not just that now is not the time not to take his side. He's bechlal not so teachable. In other words, the first step, and this is just a good thing to be aware of in general, is that people learn, the mind opens up when people are calm, safe, and secure. So it's not just midas toivis. Now is not the time to lecture him. Maybe now's the time to need empathy. It's more than just that he needs the empathy. It's the empathy will help him restore to a calmer place. The validation will help him come to a calmer place. In the calmer place, you can teach him everything. You can teach him Torah, you can teach him midas, you can teach him everything. In this state of mind, the biggest role of a mechanech is just help the Talmud get back to his, a healthy baseline, calm, secure, trusting. That was one thing. And the second thing, quickly, about more the text is, is also on a few levels. There's like, number one, to always realize, and we all do this. It's not so. A lot of times, we come a certain age and we say, "Well, this is the way I go." In other words, this is the way I do it, right? I was talking to someone recently, a person who's about a mechanech with chushim adirim, right? But a lot of times what you see is certain people that have these unbelievable chushim is they're not necessarily so structured in the world of tikkun. They're more toyodik, there's a lot of oyer, and there's less. So we all have this, is that we kind of look at ourselves, okay, but this is who I am, right? Whether I'm 25 or I'm 30, I'm 35, 40, 45, 50, this is who I am. And the first thing that the Friedrich Rebbe really establishes very strong at the end of the Perek is, there's no such thing, this is who I am, l'chisar. That I am, in other words, to make peace with the fact that we all have predispositions for chisrainus, predispositions for milas, that's a given. And that's valuable to realize. I'm not bad, I'm not damaged goods because I have a chisar. But the idea that this is who I am, but this is the way I operate, I can't do anything about it, it's really never true. And the minute we start really believing in our ability to change, that's when change becomes possible. That's when we open up ourselves to change. And the second thing is even a little bit more, as you see, he's not just saying that the chisaron shouldn't be a chisaron. He says lamaila. And this nekuda, what we find all the time is that when a person he's not just not anymore blemished by the chisaron. It's so much more, it's so much with so much more depth. It pashit is a mila. It's a mila as a durchigangen. Not just is he able to relate to other people, he's able to help other people. He's stronger in it. And a lot of us today, because of certain shvedikaiten that are maybe more prevalent today, while we look at ourselves that we have, predisposition for risk, for yonim, which are hepech of Yerushalayim or whatever it is, when we work on it properly, the chisarn is a mila. In other words, a person today can be stronger than chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, because they never had to work on it. You take your chisarn, you turn it around, and for yourself you're strong, and for your students, for whoever you're coming into contact with, you're on a different level of strength.
Okay, so this is the end of Perek Dalet. The question is, do we go straight into Hay, or we want to cut and start a new recording?
I'll cut and we'll start a new recording.